Hello. In this video, we're going to talk about how to set up your React application so that it can be able to work with Firebase. So in this video, we're going to cover how to get the configuration, get everything set up and ready to go. And then the other videos, we'll talk about actually using specific features of Firebase, such as the database and the authentication to make that work. So to review, Firebase is called a web backend solution. It basically provides a server and as a service that lets you be able to manage sort of the server side of your application without having to actually code it or write it up yourself. So you don't have to write your own server. You sort of can use Firebase as your backend, as your sort of server work. It provides a web hosting. We've talked about that in a separate video. It provides databases. We'll go over in a separate video. It provides user authentication and storage. We'll go over in separate videos. It basically provides all that stuff along the way. This video assumes we've already done some setup for a React application by setting up some hosting. And we'll talk about how we sort of actually now set up an application, set up the code to be able to work with that. Okay, so you can access Firebase from firebase.google.com. That's where you can get to. That's where you need to go. You'll need to make sure that you sign into Firebase. You'll need to sign in with a Google account. I'm showing this because if you get this error, this is actually some just weird behavior that Google's having. This isn't actually a problem with your access. It's not a problem with your particular account. Like, you are signed in as to Google, that's fine. Just go back here. If you click the go to console directly, or you just go to console.firebase.google.com, that'll get you in fine. Don't worry about if the sign in button isn't working. Once you're actually signed in to your Google account or whatever you need in the browser, you'll be fine. Okay, so you can go ahead and create your React project. I'm assuming you've already done that. In this case, we've already got our React chat project that's going to work alongside of our React chat application that we've been building. So if you click on that, you get to sort of the main kind of dashboard homepage for your application. The ways to navigate this is that on the side here, right, under project, oh, where did it go? Oh my gosh, they keep moving things around. Oh my gosh. Oh, there we go. Sorry. So we start with our project overview. It's the sort of initial settings we want to go. Under build, here is where they list all the different functionality, ways of sort of specifying different kinds of things that React you might do with Firebase. So we'll talk about using authentication. We'll talk about using the real-time database. We'll talk about using storage. Those are sort of where you can find all these different kinds of functionality. We've done hosting through the command line application, but if you need to configure that, there's some more details about hosting again from here as well. Okay, so we'll come back to that later. That's showing up in a sidebar here. If your browser window is too small, you might need to make it expanding it in order to be able to make that sidebar appear because there's some responsiveness going on. Okay, in order to actually get ourselves then started with our code for React, right? In order to be able to actually write code to be able to connect to Firebase, we're gonna need to get some configuration in place. So we can do that by using these buttons at the top. So because we're building a web application, we're gonna want to click on the little web button here, the one that looks like a closed an empty HTML element. So if we click on that web, it'll let us be able to basically specify and configure a web app to work with Firebase. So we have to register the app first because we need to be able to give it a name. So you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call this React Chat. This is a way of sort of helping you be able to keep track of which app is which. It doesn't really matter what you call it. Right? You can give it any name you want. It's really visible for you. It's an internal thing to do. It has the option for setting up Firebase hosting. We've already done that in a separate video, so don't click that. We don't want to actually set up any of our additional hosting, so we're good to go. We can click Register App. That'll then give it that kind of name, again, for our own tracking. It'll take a moment. Cool. And with that said, it is then specifies how to add the Firebase SDK, which is the standard development kit that lets us be able to actually write code to connect to Firebase. So there's two steps. It tells us exactly how to make this work. First thing we want to do is we need to install the Firebase library. Now, this is different than the Firebase CLI, the command line interface that we installed earlier that lets us manage Firebase deployment. This is actually going to be the library that's going to let us call functions to Firebase, right? It provides the Firebase functions, the Firebase kind of methods that we can use in JavaScript to make our code work. So we're going to need to install this library, and we do that just like we'd install any other library. We're going to use npm install, and the name of the library is Firebase. So if we go to our terminal, we can do npm install Firebase, which will take a moment. We're doing in real time here. Not great. And it installs that package, and we're good to go, and everything's set up. You'll notice that then what happens is that it got added to our package.json file. So again, any other members of your team who then want to also who need to be able to work with Firebase, or want to make sure where code runs, they just need to run npm install to install all the stuff listed in the dependency list. I'm going to note that we are working with Firebase version 10. That's kind of the current standard version. This is version 9 would work as well, but version 10 is where we want to go. This was introduced in August 2021, is what my note said. We're using that version instead of version 8. Version 8 is not compatible. It uses a totally different set of syntax and totally different structures than what we're doing in the rest of these videos. So make sure you're sort of on the correct version of Firebase, and that if you go look for other guidance or other help or other tutorials, that you are again working with the recent versions of Firebase and not the older versions, because the syntax and the structures are a little bit different. Concepts are the same, but kind of like the way we call methods is just structured a little bit different. Cool. So that installed, that's great. We're good to go. The next thing we need to do is actually connect our application to Firebase. Basically, we need to say that out of all these Firebase projects we created, which one is this app going to be connecting to? Which database we're going to use? Which authentication system we're going to use? Which out of all those projects that we saw on our dashboard, which one are we actually connecting to? So the way that we do that is by specifying some configuration information, which it gives us the code we need to write. So we're going to put this code inside of our index.js file. We're literally going to copy and paste this code into our file, just like that. So what that will do is I will import a function from the Firebase library's app module called initialize app that gets us all set up. We can add additional things that we want to use later. We'll do that later. We're then going to actually specify our configuration. So this basically specifies which application we're working with. It includes all the keys and the projects and domains and sort of all the connecting information that we need. We don't have to touch it. We just copy and paste it in, and it's good to go. And then finally, we can call initialize app. Now, the starter code assigns it to an app variable. We don't actually ever need that. Initialize app will just go ahead and connect us, configure us, so that anytime we try to do any Firebase level work, we'll be talking about this application, right? The one specified in this config. Cool. Let me put it inside index.js, and that way, because it's in our index file, whenever our React application runs and first loads initially, Firebase will get set up and configured and be ready to use. I know some tutorials will tell you to put this inside of a separate file to create some separate other modules to manage your Firebase. Don't do that. Don't worry about it. Just put it all in the index. That tends to just make it easier because now it's all in the same place and you sort of know where it is and you don't have to bounce around and look for it anymore. Great. And with that, we can continue on to our console, and then we're coming back to our basic to our sort of homepage, and this is where we now can begin adding in the other features and components like the database to our application. So that's all you need to get your app set up and configured and ready to go with actually working with Firebase's features and database and so forth.